darling.
Great. Well, thank you everybody for joining us on this Wednesday afternoon. I was going to say, this is the wonderful world of watches. I have to say, I'm both blessed and spoilt by a talented team of specialists around me. Um, and many of them include our watch specialists as well. So, as we go through today, I'll be talking to you about what Alistair would say to you with regards to watches. So there's some of it that's maybe a little bit new to me as well, but it's very much a changing market. So as we see the prices of watches both come up as well as down, and I'm going to share our presentation. So, and Sam, just one more time for you.
Oh, I do love that mechanism. Is it moving? Yes, it is now moving. It's nifty.
So, okay, so by the end of the webinar, I'll say rather than seminar, webinar, you will hopefully understand why people collect watches. The key brands that we're seeing have the most sort of volatility in the market, what drives prices to increase, why watches are theft attractive, the risk of fakes, the watch register, if you're not aware of it, and the role that valuations play in all this. So, why do people collect watches? Well, certainly there's personality and style. There's a huge difference in the available watches, and they provide stylish nods to any period of time. Colors of dials can indicate mood, diamonds dress up a dial, and fun swatches can show interest in watches without having to spend a lot. And it's really interesting. We're looking after a client at the moment that has around about 200 watches in his collection. And it's lovely to see that some of them are in the hundreds of pounds and some of them are in the sort of high thousands. But I think with watches, you really can dress the watch up or dress it down. We know that there is obviously a demonstration of wealth and clearly a status symbol, and has always been, but in recent years, this has been elevated with certain musicians, celebrities, high net worth individuals, and sports stars taking the level up. And I love when people do colour coordinate their watches to what they're wearing. Um, Investment. We know that watches are a great investment. They also um, they don't have any capital gains tax on them. So again, this is very good for people looking for investment. They're small, they fit in the back of a safe, but obviously the values can fluctuate both up and down. We know that at one point, Patek Philippe Nautilus watch was going up in value quicker than a flat in Knightsbridge. So it really was moving. We've seen sort of the figures around sort of COVID where people didn't have a huge amount to do, that they were looking at different areas of the market. And we saw that people's sort of changes in how they buy online, where we're seeing a large amount of sort of high value items actually appearing and people paying for them online and having them sent to their doors. Watches are also very portable and they're easy to wear, and you can wear them either through an airport, then you can wear them in your Ferrari. So, whichever floats your boat. They're designed to be collectible, so they provide limited editions, franchise tie-ins. You'll often see celebrity tie-ins as well. So all watch companies are sort of looking at that long-term sales opportunity. And obviously, clients want to have both the new watch coming out into the market, but also that they want to have it that maybe somebody else doesn't. We have written lots of articles on watches. If you don't get our articles, you can go to the bottom of our website and just pop in your email address, and you'll get them in your inbox every Thursday. I think this week's is on handbags, so keep an eye out for that one. So, who are the big players in the market? Well, they tend to be Patek Philippe, Rolex, and Audemars Piguet. So, Rolex, the biggest of the players, nowhere near the oldest. Oh, sorry. Nowhere near the oldest and nowhere near the best. But continually, these watches that people associate with success, wealth, and definitely a style icon. And I think people actually, you know, they've made it when they can afford to buy that Rolex, if you like them. They make great watches. And obviously, we had a problem with supply and demand, but they built another factory, which is hopefully producing over 1 million watches per year. But we are still seeing that there are delays in actual, or more so the fact that there's more people to buy than there is supply. And this is why we get the waiting lists for Rolex. Then you've got Audemars Piguet, again a 19th century house that's created a premium watch for over 100 years with very well respected movements and developments. 1970 was their biggest year. However, with the Royal Oak being released, creating a new business model for them and defining a style, that is what they have become known for. Then we've got Patek. Again, these watches mark generations and models that have ever lasted decades. Patek have crossed the difficult threshold of being a heritage brand, turning into, and in brackets, arguably, the most desired brand in horology. So then we also get other brands that people may talk about. So whether it's Hublot or Cartier, you also get Swatch. I know one of our specialists very much enjoys the Swatch watch and what they're doing to actually make them collectible. So, what other watches need to be considered? So, we've got independents such as Roger Smith, new brands with burner on, and then we've got military Grenard, and then obviously pocket watches. Um, we're also seeing that pocket watches are being smelted down at the moment, which is really sad. And it's being smelted down because of their gold value. With the price of gold at the moment, it's having an effect both on period watches, but also new watches being made. Um, So, how have watch values changed over time? So, fairly self explanatory, always a good idea to show the Rolex residual values always stand up best after a drop in market figures. Oops, sorry, that was me. Um, so, if we look at these watches, we saw in sort of we look at 2022 as being the highest price that they got to. So the Rolex GMT Master 2, this retails and came out in June of 2025 for £15,450. Now, if we look at that watch, its earlier model in 2022, this was sort of 22 to 25,000. Then, as we've sort of gone into June, it's that June 2025, it's sort of 15, 16,000. So the secondary market and the retail market are mirroring each other. That's not such a collectible watch. Then, if we look at the Daytona Ice Blue Platinum, this will retail for about 67,500. In 2022, we were up to 140 to 160,000 in cost. January of 24, it started to come down. However, today you're still looking at around about sort of 95 to 100,000, even on the secondary market. This is a collectible watch. People want to own these, and the supply and demand is difficult. When we go out to see clients to value watches, It's really important that we ask the question in the event of a loss, how would you choose to replace? And if they've got a regular watch dealer that they're working with, or if they've got access to them on the sort of retail market, walking into Watches of Switzerland, something like that, then that's fine. And you can use the rate that it's going to cost you in the shop. So the RRP price. However, if your client wants to replace their watch literally in the event of a loss straight away, then the chances are they're going to have to resort to the secondary market. So, Watch Collector, Chrono 24, Watch Finder, places like that to be able to actually replace their watch. And on those sites, you're going to be paying a premium. So, we need to value them at the secondary market rather than the RRP price. However, if your client is actually getting a valuation from the retailer, they will only ever recognize the RRP. They don't recognize the secondary industry. So you need to make sure that you've got the understanding of how your client wishes to replace that watch. And then looking at the Rolex Submariner, 9,100 in June of 2025. Again, that sort of got to 16 to 18,000 in 2022. And even today, if you can't get it supplied within the timescale that you're looking at, the secondary market, you'd be looking at paying 12 or 13,000 for that watch. The Audemars Piguet, again, retail 71,400 for the 26240 OR. That got to 130 to 150,000 in 2022. It's now around about 95 to 100,000. So you're still looking at paying a premium because of the supply and demand. The same with the 1521, 30,000 for retail, got up to about 25 to 30, so didn't really move in 2022. And now, if you are looking to replace it and not wanting to wait in the sort of supply chain, you're going to be looking at paying a little bit over, potentially up to 40,000 on the secondary market. And again, if you're buying off the secondary market, you need to be making sure that you are buying from a reputable dealer. I presented in Leeds on Thursday of last week, and I was presenting with McLaren's, and McLaren's shared their presentation, which included fakes. So fakes are actually being offered on these sites for what I would say a come and get me price. So not too much higher than the retail, but too good for other sites. So again, just be careful where you're buying your watches from. Boxes and papers are really important. And as we go through the presentation, I'll explain the value of those as we go through. So the Audemars Piguet 15500, 24,800 RRP. Again, moved during COVID up to about 80,000. And then today you're still looking on the secondary market at around about sort of 50 to 55,000. So if your client is only insuring for the RRP, then they could very much find that they won't be able to replace it straight away, and they will be waiting sort of on a list for that watch to become available. So again, Patek Philippe, we saw the increases. This watch in particular, the Nautilus 5712, it retailed last year for around about 47,940. It was up to 150 to 220,000 during COVID. So big money for this watch. It's now it's still a lot higher. You're looking at around about sort of 90 to 100,000 if you're looking to replace this watch. The 5968R, 69,000 retail. That's sort of today, you're looking at around about sort of 105 to 110,000 on the secondary market. And the 5711, Again, this was making more than 150,000 during 2022. Today, you're looking at around about 95 to 120,000 to replace. So very collectible are these watches. So again, how would your client choose to replace? These are the questions that you need to be asking. So looking at wristwatches, we know that values have reduced in some, but obviously regular valuations will confirm the prices of what the replacement is or the secondary market replacement. Um, Collectors often will be buying for investment as well as they may be wearing them. But obviously, exposure to the market will be greater. People with watch collections of sort of 1 to 10 pieces, they will have seen an increase in the overall value. Vintage watches, again, increase in value. The question is, what is it? You know, who's it by? Who's the maker? Condition will also play a part in this. So again, it's really important that they're getting regular updates on what they are. So, but certainly the drop in value tends to be from either market changes, supply and demand being one of them. Um, if you can go into Rolex and actually buy a watch, you might be quite lucky. You would need to have had a relationship with them and certainly bought another couple of watches. I know with Watches of Switzerland, you start off on the ground floor. And if you get to go up to the first floor, which is where you'll find the likes of Rolex, Audemars Piguet, and Patek Philippe, but you will have had to have bought with them a couple of times before you're able. And it's purely because they have got more people wanting to buy the watches than they do have supply. So I thought I'd play a little game with you just to see what the overall knowledge is. Again, there might be a trick question in there somewhere, and I'll see if anybody can identify it. So, Sam, do we want people to put one, two, or three, one being the one on the left,
Yeah,
in the chat box?
yeah, that's
Um,
that's always a good idea if you've got the reveal slide in a minute. So in the chat, don't need to say anything other than which is the most expensive, one, two, or three.
See what people. I was going to say you can probably see all of the makes. Yeah, and actually they're all Rolex.
Most people are going for one. I have a couple going for two. One person has hazarded a guess at three, but I would say that a couple more have gone in at three. Oh, two's going up in the rankings. So what would I say? I would say it's somewhere between one. I'd say one overall is winning.
Okay. I wonder if anybody knows why one is the most collectible.
Oh, someone's given you an answer there. Is that the first
Ah,
year that Daytona was introduced?
uh,
Toby
it was.
Evans as a good guess.
I was going to say the first one actually sold for 7.8 million. It was owned by Paul Newman, and it sort of defines that model, which is effectively nicknamed after him. We then have number two, again, a fantastic vintage version of the watch, amazing design and proportioned, whilst the last one is a modern incarnation of the classic model, but still remains and retains all the right attributes for a Rolex. So well done if anybody got Paul Newman on that. So, why are some watches more valuable than others? Oh, and just quickly going back to the quiz, um, the first watch was actually insured for £5,000 when it came to auction to be sold. So, I think the owner was pretty shocked at the price that it got. So, why do prices increase? Well, as I said, it's demand. It can also be down to fashion while subtracting availability. It's a simple formula that dictates these things, but there will always be changes and things that are beyond this. So, in other words, if you have somebody like, I'd say, let's look at somebody in the public eye. If you look at David Beckham, Tudor have sold many more chronographs because of his name attached to it. Watch suppliers, I think, are very clever. They keep on bringing out a new one. They put a different color face on it. They different color hands. They do it in three different colors, so you've got lots of availability. Um, and they're constantly revamping their ranges with whether it's be sports stars, F1 stars, famous people that attract their name. And if you think about it, Wimbledon, before they even, the players, once they've won, before they've even gone and had their photographs taken, they're making sure that they put their watches on. So it's very much about that sponsorship and being seen with the latest watch. So again, various, as I said, sports stars and film stars will attach themselves to different makers. So do prices ever decrease? Well, the answer is yes, and there will always be changes. As well as going up, they also can come down. Effectively, your watch is part of the value of the company. It's like owning stock. The critical thing to emphasize yet again is that your watch will be undervalued if you've purchased it in retail and have not had it valued. Um, Even when the market hasn't gone up, the retail price will have done. So, again, very much you will never see a for sale sign in Rolex's window, and they tend to put the prices up twice a year, once in June time for the summer market, and again in October time for the Christmas market. But where we're also seeing the price of watches having an effect at the moment is the price of gold. And obviously, some watches are made in gold straps, gold casings, and that is also pushing up the prices at the moment. So we'll also touch briefly on fake watches as well as we go through. But we have certainly seen that thefts are happening and watches are part of sort of that with people having them taken off their wrists. And what can clients do about it? Well, I was going to say it's probably not wearing them in some places, just being a little bit more cautious. uh, Obviously, people are aware of the prices of watches and the ones to go for. So, again, it's just being a little bit more careful and having them regularly sort of valued. So, who buys fake watches? Well, I suppose it's those that can't necessarily afford the real thing, but in some cases, people are buying fakes. You know, I was talking to one of the guys from McLaren's, the loss adjusters, the other day, and he was saying that the movements, the sort of the craftsmanship that goes into a fake watch is so good, and they're trying to literally replicate the originals. And the workings are very good, and they'll probably last you just as long. I did think it was slightly amusing that he was actually wearing a fake, but he was very honest about it. And, as he said, it's a great watch. Genuine owners obviously prefer the real thing and they don't necessarily want to wear a replica. However, they might wear one in public if they're going into London. People may know that they've got the real deal, but they just want to be a little bit more careful. 90% of fakes come from China because they've got the technology, the skills, and the law isn't enforced. So Turkey is also quite high on the list, and Vietnam has been rising over 5 years with, again, quality workmanship. Some of the best experts in the world have been fooled on fake watches. Uh, If you find that you're taking your watch to be serviced, which is often a recommendation by um, the makers, if you take it into Rolex and it's deemed to be fake, they will smash it up and you won't get it back. So it's just to be something to be aware of.
Rachel, we've had a question. What are manufacturers doing to combat fakes?
Um, they they do different things to the watches. So if you look at Rolex at the moment, they've actually etched the uh, it's not a crown, it's a coronet. They etch the coronet onto the glass. So apparently that's quite difficult to do. So there's certain things that the watch companies are doing to make it more difficult for fakers. Um, but they've got access to everything. They've got access to the winders, to all the sort of mechanical part of the watch. Um, so it's a lot more difficult. Um, but fakes are an issue and they are illegal, if you've got one. Um, However, I think, trying to find the people that are making them is pretty difficult.
Yeah. Are you coming on to talk to us about the top two or three obvious things that indicate it's a fake?
Yeah. So
Lovely.
there you go, Sam. So boxes often don't look, feel, or smell right. They can often be the wrong color, the wrong size, use the wrong glue, and are badly applied. So we find that it's more the additional things that go with the watches. So it's things like the paperwork. The paperwork isn't stamped or dated, or the paper that it's produced on is not as good as quality. The color and the front of the logo on Rolex cards is close, but it's not quite the right texture. Uh, as I said to you on the front of the glass, it's actually etched with the coronet on there. Cyclops magnifier lenses often are incorrect. So if you see where the date is, they don't look right. It looks a little bit distorted. It should be 2.5 times is what basically that magnifying lens is. Um, the date wheel, check every number is correct. Um, Again, that's sometimes where you can see the fakes. Uh, the coronet should be at 6 o'clock. So, in that position, if you see it without the magnifying glass, it's definitely a fake. It should appear to be floating, engraved at different heights, so again, it's quite a key giveaway if it isn't. The bezel, the inner ring surrounding the dial, the font and spacing to the engraving must be 100% perfect. So Alistair's written a really good article on fakes. So if you go to our website, do check it out because he does give you an idea of what you're looking for, and the quality of the brushing, making sure the wording is clear. Again, looking at things like the screws. Look at who's selling it. What's the quality of the seller. A good one will understand and trust your questions. If you're brushed away, then obviously that's a bad sign. And if it's too good to be true, then often it is, and walk away. So here's the article that Alistair has written. So do go and have a look at the website, and it does give you some clear telltale signs. We also do one on handbags if you're interested. So, ladies out there, if you would like to see the telltale signs of fake handbags, you will also find that on the website. Um, you may have heard me talk about the watch register. Now, this is basically any watches that are stolen tend to go on this register. It's where most people will both report and look, and they will look at the sites as well, looking for stolen watches. So, and they do actually recover them as well. I think 50% of recovered watches are found within the first year of theft. So they're a really good site, and obviously it's a really good place to go for to look and check that your watch hasn't been stolen. Again, looking at sort of paperwork, I mentioned it briefly, but the paperwork has a value. And we did a valuation recently for a client that he had a break-in and they didn't get the watches, but they took all the paperwork and all the boxes. And if you go onto eBay, I actually think you can buy the watch boxes, which really they shouldn't be doing. But the value of the boxes are around sort of 20% of the value. If you haven't got boxes and papers when buying, then I would be slightly worried. If you already own the watch and you don't have them because you didn't keep them, the watch is quite old. I would take the watch to Rolex to get serviced and keep a copy of that service history because obviously that confirms that the watch is right and that Rolex have seen it. And again, this sort of goes back to the importance of valuations. A valuation will give you peace of mind. They'll also give the broker, the client, and the insurer sort of confidence that the watch is being seen and the value is correct. Now, we also do a desktop watch valuation for clients. Now, that means we're not seeing it, but we will, if need be, we'll do a video call with the client. We always want to make sure that they've got the boxes and papers. We ask for photographs of both of them to confirm that the client does have them. And they're certainly with things like receipts, you're looking at when they bought it, that it all ties in and it's telling the right story for when we're valuing it. But not all valuers are equal, and someone may be brilliant at the old masters, but it doesn't mean they know anything about modern art or watches and jewellery. So your local jewellery shop may be okay if they're giving you a value on some relatively standard items, but they aren't always qualified to value heirloom pieces. And we obviously, if need be, will come out to a client's home. We don't want them walking around with their watch collections. But a professional valuation service is understanding and understands the nature of the client and obviously sends qualified specialists appropriate to their needs to their home at the time of their choosing. So valuations can be very easy. Um, Again, when we're doing valuations, we're obviously having a chat with the client on how they would choose to replace, but also looking at things like we come across some watches that have got diamonds around, and it's were those diamonds put on at the time that the watch was manufactured, or were they added at a later date? So we very much look at things like clasps and fittings. Again, for insurers, we're just making sure that the watch is safe to be worn and that in the event of a loss, it's not proven that there was a problem with the mechanism on the watch. At the moment, we're recommending watches valuation sort of every year, but that doesn't mean that it will be necessary to do a valuation as the value might not have changed. So again, it's having that sort of relationship with us that we're updating the value for the client and just checking. So what do we look for? Well, the first one is that we're looking at what purpose we're doing the valuation for. So, an insurance replacement, a secondary market valuation is different to a probate or a divorce valuation, of which we do both. So, we're also looking at if the watch was purchased abroad. was duty paid on entry? Did the client go through the green or the red channel? Because obviously anything over £155 that is brought into the country needs to be declared. If they haven't done this, then obviously a valuation will help in the event of proving ownership and value. Also, making sure the valuer has experience. And this again is really important for your clients in making sure that they know what they're doing. Again, if there's a receipt, what currency is the receipt in? You might find that you weren't aware or you hadn't spotted what was needed uh, when you're looking at the receipt. And we do a whole webinar on what to look out for when accepting valuations. And you want to make sure that you're getting details of the valuer, that you've got a full detailed description of the watch, including photographs, serial numbers, dates, um, everything from boxes and papers to condition. So you want to be seeing everything within that valuation. And again, terms and conditions of the valuer's company as well is really, really important. But what is also important is the date that it was done and checking out who did it. So go to the website and see who actually produced the valuation. As I mentioned, we do the desktop valuation. It's £50 per watch. If this is of interest to anyone, we can always share this flyer with you, so you can share with your clients. They are recognised by the insurance market who will accept them. So, as we said, how often should you get valuations done? Well, certainly watches are every year. And then jewelry at the moment, we're saying within the last 2 years, and it's all about that gold price and what it's doing. Contemporary art every 2 years, general contents every four. But again, it's looking at if changes have been with, circumstances have changed. So, in other words, are you still living in the same property? What has changed? Um, so the benefits of using a professional valuation service is obviously going back to the qualified valuer, their skills and knowledge is up to date, proof of ownership. We go in most cases to the policyholder's home, so we're actually checking it out. We provide a true replacement value or a value on the secondary market, and then your client will get a full understanding of their asset. And once we've done that, it's easier to keep up to date. And it's also making sure that the company you're using has the correct PI insurance in place. For us to work with the likes of Hiscox and Chubb and Aviva, we have to carry at least 5 million. We actually carry more because of the items that we're seeing, but you do need to just be making sure that you've got the right cover in place. We also, if we're going round to a client's home, we charge on a time basis. So we can very easily provide you or your clients with a proposal of the cost of the valuation. Now, I thought again we would play a little game so that you can have a guess on which is the real deal. And so it's deal or real in this case, which so there's the Amiga, uh, and then there's also another Amiga. Which one do you think is right?
So the first one that you showed with the check sleeve, that's A, and the other one with the
Mhm.
particularly hairy arm, that's B. Anybody want to give us, oh, two? You could go with numbers if you want to be different. Um, so people are voting, and majority are saying the second one at the moment. A few people are hazarding the first. Majority going for the second one. Interesting.
Well, when I played this, I went for the one on the left. It's actually not. It's the one on the right that's correct here. But if you look at the two of them, I was going to say some of them are so good.
So hard.
You would think, yeah. And even talking to the McLaren's guy last week, he was saying that the quality of the fake watches are really impressive. And again, we have one on the right and one on the left. So
Uh,
which
uh,
one do you
yeah.
think?
So yeah. So do you want to go right or left, guys? Which one do you think is the real one? Right. Someone's come up and said left. Anybody going to contradict? Got a couple of rights, rights, left, left. Oh, a lot more coming in for left.
And they will be correct. It's the one on the left. And then we've got the Panerai.
Okay, let's do left and right again. Which one do you think is? You going to show us the second picture? There we go. So left or right, which is the real one? Everyone's peering at the moment. Okay, so I've got the majority coming through are saying right.
And again, they will be correct. It is the one on the right. I pointed out on this one that the winder looks a little bit dodgy on the one on the left. But apparently there were other reasons to why it was wrong. And again, the Cartier, one on the right and one on the left.
So right or left, guys? All right. So left, right, 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 left, left. Left is probably just winning it, but there's quite an even split.
Yeah, it is the one on the left. And actually, the one on the right was actually part of a claim, and it was incorrect. It was fake. And then we have the one on the right
Rolex one. Come on then. So,
and the one on the left.
oh God, I just would not know. Right.
I
So what do
know
you think? Right or left, guys?
they're
Um,
very good, aren't they?
left is winning at the moment, but that doesn't mean that they're right, guys. Just because everyone's going left doesn't mean they're right. Gosh, there's a contradiction in terms. Left is definitely winning on this one.
Yeah, and on this one, it was the one on the left that's correct.
Maybe they're looking at the suit and thinking no one could have a suit like that.
Left and right.
People are thinking about it. Right, we've got a right, left, right, 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 left. Lots of right, couple of lefts. Most people are going right on this.
Okay. The one on the right was actually the fake. I also think that we might have had the same arm used, which is a slight giveaway. So the one on the left is actually the correct one. Uh, but
So,
yeah,
Rachel, before you whiz on, we had a question earlier on about condition, because it's one thing having a watch and keeping it in your jewelry box or whatever, but
yeah.
a lot of people like to wear their watches, and that is going to lead to dinks and scratches. What difference do they make to the value of a watch?
Well, don't forget if we're valuing for insurance, then it's new for old.
Okay.
So condition won't actually come into it because we're looking to put them back into the position in the event of a loss. So we need to make sure that they can replace their watch. What you can find is that some models will have become obsolete, so they can't actually replace it with the one that they previously had because they might not be available. So we look at putting them into what is Rolex's range at that point. What is the watch that would be similar today? And that is where we'd be placing our value. So condition really doesn't play a lot into it unless you're looking to sell it. So, and this is where people will often find that they will obviously struggle maybe getting back their investment if the condition isn't good. And then if you don't have the boxes and papers, as I said earlier, the boxes and papers can be about 20% of the value.
Mm.
So again, when we're valuing, if the client hasn't got the boxes and papers, we are taking that into consideration, even though we don't take consideration into the uh, condition, we will actually be taking that into consideration. We've just done a valuation for a client that, which I think I might have mentioned, that lost all of their boxes and papers. They did actually retain the watches, but there was a theft that took place, and they're actually being compensated by the insurers for the loss of value of the boxes, um, which is a rather interesting one. Um, just in the whole process of actually that claim, it's been really interesting to be part of it. Actually, the client has tried his hardest, even getting to quite high up in Rolex itself to get items reproduced. So, in other words, get the boxes and papers reproduced, and they just won't do it. So, do be aware or say to your clients, you need to keep the boxes and papers safe, but also not with the watches, because if there is a thief and they take everything, they've basically got title to sell. You've given them the lot. Um, but looking at the fakes and forgeries, as I said, they can often be too good to be true, and stay away from it. Go to a reputable dealer that's actually selling the watches rather than Joe Bloggs on the street. So hopefully you'll understand why people collect watches, what the key brands are at the moment, what's driving prices, why what watches are theft attractive, and it's mainly down to that value. There is a sort of market to sell second-hand watches, and that's why we're seeing them being stolen. Again, the price of gold is also taking up those prices again. The watch register, if you don't know it, please do register onto it and just see what's coming through. And the number of watches that are being stolen, it still is a big market. And then obviously the risk of fakes and the importance of having a valuation. I mentioned earlier that if your clients are buying from outside of the UK, it's always a good idea to get a valuation done, because not only will we give them paperwork to prove in the event of a loss, but if they did not go through the right channel when they were coming back into the country, they could be asked to show duty paid on entry, which is obviously important. We also do other training if anybody is interested. I mentioned the articles earlier. If you don't get our articles, please go onto our website and register to receive them. We also do a lot on LinkedIn, trying to provide industry information. So again, if that's of interest, do link in with us and say you've got it. These are my details. Please don't hesitate to give me a call, send me an email. We're here to help. And if any of you would like us to share the brochure on the desktops, let me know and I can send you a copy for you to share with your clients. And that's it, Sam.
Well, it's not. We've got a load of questions, which is always lovely. First question from Josh. What's the market like for mid-range designer watches like Citizens, Belova, Maserati, Armani? Do they increase in value or only certain special editions? Are some of those mid-market brands worth more than others?
Yes, I mean it's really interesting. Alistair wrote an article a couple of years ago on if you had 5,000 to spend, where should you spend it on a watch? And actually, he gave some really good examples, because not everybody wants a Rolex, not everybody can afford, a Patek, and they're looking at other options. The other options will go up naturally because the prices will change on the high street. So, but we're not seeing the big changes. What we tend to find as well is vintage watches. They're going up in value because people were looking at alternative areas. They had all the new stuff and then they're starting to add to their collections. You would be amazed at the number of people that have watch collections and also know a heck of a lot about their watches. It's a passion and it's not just a passion purchase, it's also an investment. As I said, there's no capital gains tax on watches. So if you look to realize your watch, then obviously you can do really well. However, if you are a collector and you're in a collecting club with either Rolex or Watches of Switzerland and you get invited to the launches, firstly, if you don't buy at the party, you don't get invited back. But also, if you are seen to be selling, you're blacklisted. So you're not supposed to sell for profit. And don't forget, all these watches have serial numbers on, and that serial number will be registered to your name. So the big houses are watching the secondary market on who's selling. So you've got to be really careful. What we do find, we do a lot of evaluations for Watches of Switzerland clients, and the reason that they send them our way is because if they haven't got the watch that they bought from them in their collection, they can be blacklisted. But if they've not done the valuation, they're not aware because some watch collectors are doing swaps.
Okay.
So they will agree to swap their watches with another of their chums that are in the group.
Okay.
So, yeah,
So
really
mo-
interesting.
moving off the high end brands, which are the more affordable watch brands or up and coming brands that you're seeing come into collections? Are there independent or micro brands that you're seeing pop up more and more?
There are, and there's some top end watches that you won't have even heard of, that there will be one of 10 or one of 12, but they can be, again, one of the watches in another of my presentations is £1 million. And that's because it's so high end and so collectible. But it, again, I had never heard Alistair, God love him, gives me all this valuable information that I'm sharing with you today. Um, but I think, Hublot, you've got IWC, again, good watches, good mechanisms. And I think go and have a look at that article. If you just type in £5,000, it should come up on our website that you can actually see the watch article, or just type in watch and you'll get all the articles. But he was wanting to give people an idea of what to buy if that's your budget. So
Excellent. Okay. The last question I've got on the screen. So, if anyone's got anything, we've got a few more minutes. Write them in the screen. If a large number of watches are being stolen, are they not being kept in safes? I would. Where are they being
that
stolen from?
well,
Wrists.
there was a big one that people are actually being mugged in London for their watches. Um, at the moment, my other half won't wear his watch in London. I'm not saying the streets are not safe. He's just taken precautionary measures. Certainly if you're wandering around at night, you don't necessarily want to put your Richard Mille £125,000 watch on show. Um,
And if you're a social influencer, you shouldn't be posting saying, "I'm off out to this event tonight. Here's my lovely watch," because you're telling people where you are and what you've got.
and sadly, they do.
Mm.
And we had a client the other day that sadly had a break in, and I was going to say the audacity was that they stole all the watches and jewelry and threw it in the Hermes handbag.
How convenient.
Yes. So,
Okay.
and this is where when we talk to clients about safes, we never want to know where they are. We just say, are they in the vicinity of your bedroom? Because if you come back after a night out, are you actually putting it in the safe for, safe measures, or is it going next to the bed? Um, do
There's
you
been an
forget?
instance of somebody famous left their watch on by the side of the bed, and a maid or something let themselves in and took it, something like that.
Well, I've heard various stories about hotels
Yeah, yeah.
because again, um, the hotels have paid out on these stories, and you don't know whether it's true because they're not wanting it out there in social media land that their clients are being targeted for their jewelry, and they're being stolen from their room.
Yeah.
So I am aware that there's a couple of times that they've paid out.
Okay.
But they do want proof that you actually do have the watch. So they do want the boxes and papers and things like that to actually take the
Yeah.
claim all the way through. But yeah,
Okay. One more question for you. Do big brand watches such as Rolex deliberately keep supply low to keep demand and waiting lists going?
yeah, no, they don't. They just cannot fulfill. So Rolex had a new not warehouse, what am I thinking? Workshop built, um, which they were hoping was going to be sort of help with the supply and demand. They also don't want to increase the prices too much on RRP because they know all it will do is affect the end secondary market, and they're not wanting to fuel that. Because I had conversations certainly during COVID. Well, why don't they just up the prices to stop the secondary market? But actually, it's not going to stop the secondary market. It's just people can't get the demand, and there's certain ones that are more collectible than others, and we're still seeing that there's a problem with the sort of the timelines that you have to wait. Some watches are 2 and 3 years.
Yeah.
That's if you can even get your name on the list.
Yeah.
Um,
Okay. We're pretty much at time, so we're going to finish off now. There's so many of you have turned up today. It's absolutely brilliant. Just to let you know, we do have three other sessions that we haven't yet run for these institutes. If people are interested, one is on memorabilia. We've got, and then two new ones coming in the spring, one on art and one on jewelry. So, very much an in depth look at those sectors, what makes them tick, stuff that you might want to know. If you are interested, please do let the institutes know because we're very happy to schedule those in and share with you.
Thank you very much for joining us. I hope you have a nice rest of your lunch.
All right. Thanks very much, guys.
Pleasure. Take care.
Bye
Bye.
bye.